Brad, you know that I'm not a guy of many complaints, but can I tell you one of my hugest pet peeves as an adult around other adults? Okay, so I go to the dentist the other day, and the dental hygienist is very nice, but she's very chatty, which is fine. We've all got to pass the time doing what, during this, whatever it is, half-hour session of teeth cleaning. But this is my same complaint that I have at the hair cutter or the barber, is that if you're going to talk to me while we're doing the thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to be some inane story that I didn't sign up for, but I'm stuck in this chair and I have to listen to it. Yes. So if I'm going to have to listen to some inane story, you are not allowed to stop working while you tell the story. Like, you can't hold the scissors over my hair and launch in about a story about your cousin, or hold the teeth cleaning tool over my teeth, but not actually do it while you finish this great story about a barbecue you went to. I'll listen. Listen, I'm a great guy. I'll listen.
Yeah.
Just keep working. Just keep working. That's all I ask.
Is there a polite way of saying, I don't want any small talk? I just want you to cut my hair or clean my I would like a polite, a universal signal that if I wear a ribbon on my shoulder, that I don't want any small talk, because I've talked about on the show before. One of my ears is almost useless. So if you're a hair cutter and you've got your buzzer, the clippers, bang, and you've got it right next to the one ear that does work, and you're talking to me, I can't hear you anyway.
Yeah.
and not for nothing, you're a delight. I kind of don't care. I just want to get my hair cut and leave. Sit, clip, up, gone, done.
Yeah.
I want to have a Google Doc where I just write down everything I'm doing for summer vacation, how my kids are doing, how my wife is doing, what I'm watching on TV, what I think about that. I'll write all of that up, send it to the person just before I get to the thing. And then when she asks me, so what are you doing for the summer? I'm going to say, check the Google Doc. And I wrote it all down for you, and I just cut my hair.
I love, by the way, that both of us are, as friends, are the most curmudgeonly people in this conversation. Because
yes.
But here's the thing, I will listen to the story. This is where I think the point of delineation needs to be made. I will listen to any story. I will nod and and for any kind of story you give me. Just don't, because the thing that drove me nuts at the barbershop the other day is it was snip, snip, and so I said to him, and then the scissors go down by the side, and you're like, no, just keep snipping.
My God, just keep snipping.
For God's sakes, you can keep talking, just keep snipping.
Yeah, I made the mistake of pretending to be too interested at one point. She says, oh, would you like to see a photo? Now she's got to get her photo out. She's got to get the phone. She's got to launch the phone app. She's got to scroll through. It's here somewhere. It's here somewhere. She's scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and I'm like, I was being polite. I don't want to actually see the photo cutting my hair.
There's no solution to this. I have no way of doing. What we need is socially. We need. You know how Amtrak has a quiet car?
Yes.
Where if you're riding on a train, short distance, long distance, you can go to the quiet car, get some work done, do some reading, do some quiet sleeping, whatever it is. The quiet car is a socially acceptable way to be like, hey, gang, we're all doing this thing together. Let's just, you know what? We don't need to talk. We don't need to talk. I want the equivalent of that for a dental hygienist or a barber, where it's just like, hey, listen, we all know we need to get our teeth cleaned or our hair cut. You know what? We don't, that's okay. We don't need to talk.
Yeah,
we don't need to talk.
We don't need to do any of this. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to be polite. You're going to do your thing. We're in and out. Nobody gets hurt.
Nobody gets hurt. And on that note, I'm going to say, hello, everybody. Welcome to Comic Lab, the show where we're going to do a little bit of talking. We're going to keep working while we do it. Making comics.
And making a living from comics. Wait, by the way, talk about the pot calling the kettle black. Here we are, two podcasters. We can't get into a show. We can't get from point A to point B without stopping in the middle and telling a story. We're the worst out of all of them. We can't even do a show. Anyway, I'm Brad Geiger, the editor of the Webcomics Handbook on Substack and the creator of Evil Inc.
Look at how he works that in on Substack. Just a little falsetto there as he goes.
I'm so
and
happy
I'm his friend
that's
Dave
working.
Kellett, the cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon, not yet on Substack, and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. We have a big week to talk about comics this week because a lot of updates. The big one that I want to jump into right away, because I think it will lead into a couple different veins of conversation, all related to making a living from our art. And that is this. I just wrapped on Friday. We are recording this on a Tuesday morning. Mm-hmm. On Friday, I finished on my large Drive Kickstarter, which was months of planning going into it. And frankly, 2.5 years of planning going into it, because every time I do a Drive book, it takes me about 2.5 years to finish the next act. And so I'm thinking about it the whole time that I'm making that book. It's sort of in the background of my brain. And in general, first of all, I want to thank all the Comic Lab listeners that jumped in, because I know there were a lot of them over at the Drive book. It's going to come out beautiful. We unlocked 21 stretch goals. It was out of the 16 Kickstarters that I've ever done. It was the second highest Kickstarter I've ever had. So I am incredibly grateful. People did all sorts of not only financial goals for the stretch goals, they did game goals. Like we had a Lego stretch goal where if I don't remember if it was 10 or 20 people built Drive ships out of Legos, we would unlock one of the physical things in the book, and they did it, and they were great. And by the way, some people are bonkers good at Lego building. I'm like, I kind of want to email them and be like, can I get the plans for this? Because I want to build that ship at my own house. Anyway, a huge thank you. So let's start with that. I thank you for everyone for a lovely Kickstarter. But now I want to talk about how there's that old phrase, Brad, that comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes.
In the sense that your life can be doing wonderful, but all it takes is you comparing yourself to the next person, and suddenly the joy dissipates. You're like, well, there it goes. Yeah. And I want to expand that thought in that this was by every stretch a wonderful Kickstarter. We ended up at $128,000. It was lovely. I was very happy with it. Could not complain about that. And yet the expectations that I had set for it made me, and Brad can attest to this, so anxious and so depressed the whole Kickstarter.
We spent a lot of time on the phone during the last month, and there was a lot of like, well, yeah, it's going okay. I guess it's all right. And I'm like, dude, because as you're talking, of course, I go over and take a look at the numbers. I'm looking at your Kickstarter. I'm looking at Kick Tracks, so I can see in real time how you've been doing. I saw that amazing first day, and I saw real solid in the middle, but it doesn't feel solid when you're in the middle because you're not going up. You're just kind of at that same level. And I knew that, like, from the outside looking in, it's like, oh my God, I'd love to have those numbers. But you were comparing it to previous Kickstarters that you've done, the previous Drive book, and what you had set a certain expectation. And yeah, it was really getting in between your ears. It was bringing you down.
Yeah, and for those that know, and I can share it again on Patreon, I have this very granular way of tracking Kickstarters, and I save all the past numbers because I find it's very helpful to know on day 15. For the last 8 Kickstarters, here's where you were on day 15, that kind of thing. Yeah. And so this one chart that I've made in Illustrator, I find very helpful. So from Brad's outside looking in, everything looked like it was gangbusters. But for me, I knew in granular detail that it was not going to beat my best Kickstarter of all time. And it was driving me bonkers because, and I want to give context to this, every Drive Kickstarter previously had done better than the last. And so I had, you know how they always say with the stock market that past performance is not a prediction of future performance, right?
Yes.
And every stock you ever buy will say that past performance is not predictive and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And unfortunately, I had set up this expectation in my mind But, well, if the first drive Kickstarter did 107 and the second drive Kickstarter did 116 and the third Kickstarter did 136, then surely, Brad, in my mind, I thought I'm going to do 150 on this fourth Kickstarter. And for whatever reason, I had talked myself into that.
Yes.
When there's a whole host of reasons why the fourth book might not do as well, or I should just accept that this is still a great Kickstarter no matter what it gets the final number to.
Yeah.
So basically, I had talked myself into a situation where I thought the past was predictive of future performance, and I thought it was a guaranteed win that this one was going to be the best drive Kickstarter ever.
Yeah.
When in fact, being the second best is still tremendous. I would kill for any Sheldon book to do these numbers, right?
And I can name a bunch of independent cartoonists who would kill to have that number that you ended up at. For any book that they've done.
And so I say this to say, because you know how you hear stories of, like, I don't know, someone with tremendous, like the Beatles made themselves miserable, right?
Yes.
They made themselves break up, even though they were arguably the best band in the latter part of the 20th century. But what I'm saying is the emotions behind art are real and valid and have real impacts on how you create. And in this specific case, it's so unfortunate because by all outward appearances, the Kickstarter did gangbusters, and yet I made myself miserable, made myself depressed and sad and anxious, frankly, really anxious the whole time that thing was running. And I'm saying this out loud both to tell you that in failure can come joy, and in success can come sadness. And it's good to strategize how to approach not only the financial and the marketing and the the logistical steps of a Kickstarter, but also prepare yourself for the emotions and how you're going to be handling it if it goes great, if it doesn't go great, or if it does middling, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know whether you want to talk about this, but you got so into your own head on this that you actually did something that you've never done before.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm happy to talk about this because we're 5 days out from the end of the Kickstarter. And I'm telling Brad, I was like, how am I not reaching past backers? Like the people that backed 1, 2, and 3 at that point in the Kickstarter, there was still like 200 people that were out that had not yet backed. And I was like, I know they're into it. My numbers for Drive on Patreon have gone up in the last 2.5 years. Yeah. Why are they not coming out for this Kickstarter? How am I not reaching out? And I thought to myself, well, it's a social media problem. I'm algorithmically not reaching the same number of people. Right. And unfortunately, it was kind of confirmed by one backer who loves and supports my work, comes out for everything. And after backing with 5 days to go, he texts me on social media saying, I don't know how I haven't seen this yet. You're almost finished with the Kickstarter, and I haven't heard hide nor hair of this Kickstarter. Meanwhile, I've been yelling it to the rooftops on every platform, annoying myself, annoying my readers most likely. And somehow, algorithmically, he has not seen a damn thing about this Kickstarter. Go ahead, Brad.
So he's Kickstarted in the past. And you did updates that went out through past Kickstarter.
Oh, I did. Yes.
He didn't see those either?
Didn't see those. I did it through MailChimp. I did it through social media. I did it on my website with my RSS feed and the comic itself, which propagates to all sorts of places. There was an ad in my WordPress underneath sort of the tile system of images and WordPress. There was a clickable ad underneath the comic in WordPress. So it was genuinely every place I could put it. There was some form of communication about, and sometimes, by the way, you can do all that and people just don't see it, right? They in the same way that we're all mentally able to block out ads on, news sites and on TV. So that's also fine. But what I'm saying is, I had worked myself into a lather about there are readers that I'm not reaching. Right. And how do I do? And so I called Brad and I said, you know what I'm going to do? Here's what I'm going to do, Brad. I'm going to spend $100 on social media advertising. Yeah. And Brad goes, oh, well, where are we emotionally, pal? And I was like, this is where, and here was my thinking. And I will just be honest with everybody. I just wanted to reach my 9,000 backers on this platform, this social media platform.
Specifically Twitter.
Yeah, specifically Twitter. that I knew that I was not reaching. I knew that they were limiting that I was not reaching my own followers on Twitter. And I said to Brad, I'm just going to spend $100. Surely that will unlock this Kickstarter message going out to all 9,000 people on Twitter. Right now, it's seemingly only the same couple hundred to 1,000 people that are seeing this ad. I want to reach the other 8,000.
Right.
And Brad goes, all right, champ, well, good, go with God.
Well, my thought more was that, like, it's good for the show. Like, what I said to you was...
Yeah, you did.
There's two things. You and I have always said that in 25, 30 years of independent comics, we've never spent money on advertising. And there's a reason for that. And that is that advertising doesn't work. It provably, time and time again, we just see that it just... There's no there. And I said, so you're going to be giving that up. You'll have to change that to saying, well, I did it once. But you can kind of put some salve on that wound by saying, by the fact that this is going to make a great topic for the show, because it's either going to go one way or the other. You're either going to spend $100 and get a great response, and you're going to say, oh my gosh, we've got to rethink advertising. Or you're going to get no response or a tepid response at best. And you're going to say, well, we were right all along. And I put $100 down to prove it. And I'm sure in this promoted post that you did, I'm sure you did a special Kickstarter URL so that you could track anyone that clicked on that link. So you know exactly that they came over from that promoted post, right?
That is exactly what I did. We talked about this beforehand, and I said I want this to be super trackable, and this is an exact event where I have a goal in mind. The goal being I want someone to back Kickstarter. I know I can track granularly via Kickstarter if this happens. And so, Brad, I put down $100. Twitter says, okay, thanks for your money. Well, and they said, we're about to start promoting your tweet in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then it was a 24-hour promotion.
Yes.
Brad,
we need a drum roll here. We need a drum roll here to come up to how many people do you think listening at home were sent over by that Twitter promotion? And in fact, you asked me, and I said, I'm betting 20 people came over and made pledges. We'll have Matt give us a little drum roll, and then Dave, you can tell us how many people came through that link.
Thank you, Matt, for the drum roll. And the answer is absolute zero. Zero people.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
So, here's the thing, Brad, so this is also important to say because, God damn it, if it doesn't reinforce what we've always said about advertising. So on average, my tweets about the Kickstarter were getting about 20 likes.
Yeah.
Do you know how many likes this one got?
Oh, certainly not less than 20. It can't be less. It has to be 40 because you paid money for it. I
got 20 likes.
Oh, my God.
On average, my tweets about the Kickstarter were getting between 5 and 10 retweets.
Yeah.
Do you know how many retweets this one got, Brad?
I'm going to guess 4.
3. 3 retweets.
Still high.
So likes, which on the internet account to absolute zero in terms of value to us, I got the same.
Yep.
Retweets, which do arguably have a value, I got less.
Yes.
And then the one thing that I needed and would paying to do to get all I needed was 2 backers, and the advertising would have paid for itself, right?
Clicks,
or frankly, even 1 if at the right level. And I got absolute zero. So in a moment of weakness, and I'm going to be honest about that, in a moment of weakness where I was like, how can I reach these Twitter backers that I'm not reaching? You know what? I'm going to pay for advertising. That'll unlock the 9,000 people. Surely that'll bring this tweet in front of all 9,000 of them. Didn't do a goddamn thing. And I'm so pissed about it because if there's one person in this world I don't want to give money to, it's Elon Musk. And by God, if I didn't do it in a moment of weakness. But anyway, it was good. I'm glad that I took the hit for everyone to tell you a thing that Brad and I have known for 15 to 20 years, which is online advertising doesn't do a goddamn thing. Yeah. And I'm so happy that I only wasted $100 to prove it.
Well, again, you took one for the team. You did that because of your love for this podcast, and you wanted to put your money where your mouth is and say, hey, listen, it's one thing to hear 2 guys say they never do it. Well, maybe they don't know anything because they never do it. right? Here you are putting your skin in the game, and you got very predictable results after you finally figured out how to promote a post, because Twitter didn't exactly make that easy either. You spent about 20 minutes, as I remember, trying to promote the post because there was their user experience was so bad.
Oh, it was terrible. Yeah. And there's going to be one or two people out there that go, well, Brad and Dave, here's your problem. You didn't do a $5,000 to $10,000 ad buy with multi-tier angles and A/B testing on the ad. Yeah. I'm telling you, no, it doesn't work.
No,
I listen from your old pal Dave and Brad here that it doesn't work. It's a waste of money. The thing that works is building up a community over years with good intent and good work, and building up a fun community.
Yes.
So that when you do reach out, using Brad's 4 C's of social media, which is content, commercial. What are the other 4 C's, Brad?
Content, commercial, curation, and of course the 4th C is kindness.
Kindness, yes. But by doing those 4 C's, you are building up a value in people's lives where they go, you know what? Yes, I will back Brad Geiger, or I will back Dave Kellett.
Yes.
And that's how you pay it forward to future you with the 4 C's. Not advertising. It doesn't work. Listen to me when I say that was just a waste of 100. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I did it because it was my once a decade test of like, well, maybe it does work. Nope, sure doesn't. Sure doesn't do a damn thing. And if anything, it made me more cussed about how much I hated Twitter. And you know what? I might as well jump in on this too, because let's talk about social media platforms that perform. Because if you remember, for the past year, as Elon Musk has bought Twitter, using Saudi and Russian money. Wonder how that's playing into this.
That's been driving me crazy, because I expected him to be out of business by now. Anybody else would be out of business, but taking out those loans that he can't pay the interest on. There's something screwy keeping him in that building, because you see how the advertisers have already just abandoned that completely. It's driving me crazy that he doesn't. We've really turned into an America with 2 different sets of rules, because any other business person would have been out on their keister by now.
Well, I have my own theories on that, but it's more conspiratorial than the world needs to hear. Anyway, so I have long said in the past year, as Brad has said as well, that you've got to stay pragmatic in your uses of social media, because you point to the company that's morally upstanding. Is it Facebook? No. Is it Instagram? No. Is it Twitter? No. Is it this or that? And so we were like, well, what are you going to do? You got to take a pragmatic approach to your company and to your work and to your marketing, and stick with it as long as it is serving your goals.
Yeah.
And Brad and I, having spent nearly a decade on Twitter, having built up an audience, I was like, listen, Dave, talking to myself, the pragmatic approach here is to ignore the hell out of who owns the place and keep talking to the readers that you love and they love you. And ideally, you're going to direct them to your Kickstarters and your book sales and your Patreons, and that'll be that, right? At the end of this Kickstarter, I got to tell you, so just to put some numbers into play here, Twitter, I have about 9,000, 10,000 followers, or I had on Twitter about 9,000 or 10,000 followers. So just keep that in mind. For simplicity's sake, let's just say 10,000 followers, just for ease of math on this.
10,000 on Twitter.
10,000 on Twitter. Blue Sky had about 1,000 at the same time that this Kickstarter was going on, right? Blue Sky brought in 9 times more backers for my Kickstarter than Twitter did, with 1/10 of the follower. So a follower count. So just from a pragmatic standpoint, you tell me where the better place to put my time, effort, energy, and passion into. It's Blue Sky. Or it might be for you Mastodon, or it might be for you Threads. I don't know which one, but you have to look at these in a real, like, these are the moments where it's like make it or break it. Like, I've put in a decade onto Twitter. If I can't get more than 9 people out of 10,000 off of Twitter to back my Kickstarter, then what am I doing as it slowly descends into a Nazi playground? What am I doing on there? So on Monday, I quit Twitter. I'm no longer I'm going to keep the account active in case somebody else buys it out 2 years from now, which they probably will. But because honestly, even the pragmatic angle is no longer valid for me.
Yeah.
So separate from the emotional and the moral angle, the pragmatic value, there's no value left in Twitter for me.
How comfortable are you sharing actual numbers like you did last time? In other words, how many pledges came through under Instagram? How many came through under Threads? Do you have those numbers?
You know what? I don't have the hard numbers, but if you guys can trust me on this, I know the ballpark numbers. Threads brought in one person. Instagram brought in somewhere between 2 and 3 people, right? And so Instagram, again, this is worth pointing out. How many people
you got following you on Instagram, by the way?
40,000 people
40K.
follow me on Instagram.
Yeah.
Instagram brought in 2 to 3 people. I don't remember which one it was.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's painfully low. 40,000 people translating into 3 people means it is a waste of time.
Yes.
My posting on Instagram has been to the benefit of Instagram, not to me.
Right.
I haven't done a damn thing for my career using Instagram. So I'm not going to be posting on Instagram anymore. I'm not going to be posting on Threads anymore. Absolutely useless. Blue Sky, when I can turn 1,000 people into 9 times as many backers, whatever it was, than Twitter had, that choice is so clear to me. I mean, to me, the things that are working right now, Blue Sky for me, Substack for Brad, we're putting our effort going forward onto the platforms that perform for us.
Yeah.
You know?
And I got to tell you, I took Twitter. I took almost all the socials off my phone just because we were going into an election year and I didn't want it. I didn't want that stuff in my head. So I took Twitter, Facebook I had gotten rid of a long time ago. Instagram I got rid of a long time ago, but even Threads and Blue Sky. And the only time I'm actually posting on that is if I'm sitting here in the studio, I'll get stuff queued up and ready to go, and then I won't think about it again till the next morning. And I've been happy as a clam. You know, not having that social media. It took a little bit of getting used to, but it's an amazing thing, Dave. You find other things to do with your time. Maybe you start an ebook, or maybe if you're like me, you listen to an audiobook, or I actually, you and Kevin McShane were talking about Imager. I've rediscovered Imager because it's like, oh yeah, this was a nicer Reddit. I remember that. I got to tell you, getting rid of that stuff, just taking it right off your phone, it was a big value add to my life and hasn't hurt my business a bit.
No. I took Twitter off my phone, took Threads off my phone. So you might be saying, well, Brad and Dave, aren't you nervous about your next Kickstarter when you don't have those? And I'll be honest, my next one will be in the early months of 2025. It'll be the Anatomy of Dog books. And I will happily report back to you based on what my expectation was for the Kickstarter and whether it met it. You not using, in this case, Twitter and Threads and Instagram. I don't think, gang, it's going to be a difference that's at all noticeable. It'll be like at worst, it'll be like a $500 difference. But frankly, not posting on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads, think about all the time that I will have saved. Yeah. Not checking, not posting, not prepping specific images for those platforms. Oh my God. Not like all the wasted time that you do. That's 1 or 2 eBay pieces might make up the difference. By the way, I don't even know that it's going to make a difference. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that it's going to make a substantive difference.
I'm putting you on the spot. We haven't discussed this beforehand, so it's perfectly okay if we cut this out. But do you have the numbers or ballpark for how many pledges came in through your website?
Again, shoot, I should have had these ready to go, but I will tell you this.
Ballpark.
I'm going to tell you what did perform for me, because this is actually more helpful for everyone going forward.
Yeah.
The things that absolutely performed, the hugest numbers came from my Patreon for Drive. Probably not surprising. Yeah. Those are the super fans, right? That brought in probably $70,000, $80,000 because the first day, it was a $60,000 day, was great.
Yes.
And all of those were from my secret Patreon launch that I often advise people to do. Yes. There was a special offer just for Patreon on that first day. They got a little something extra. And as a result, they jumped in. The next 2 were sort of neck and neck. It was past Drive Kickstarters. You know, you can update your past Kickstarters. Those 3 combined, Drive 1, 2, 3 on Kickstarter, probably brought in a sum total that was the next group below Patreon.
Right.
Then behind that, my mailing list, and I use MailChimp, Brad used Substack. That one was a go-to. Like if I sent out a specific thing to my mailing list about the Kickstarter, bam, that would be $1,000 within the hour, $2,000, $3,000. You know, like it was a great performer. And then my website probably below my mailing list.
Yep.
And then, you know, scattering a bunch of weird things. You'll see things like Yahoo Answers. You're like, what? Well, why is that referring thing? I'm joking. It's not Yahoo Answers. But you know what I'm saying? In any referral list, when you get down into the ones and twos, you know, you would see some weird link like Google Mail. And then even below that, you'd see 1, Threads, 2, Instagram. And you're like, why am I on there? What am I doing? Yeah. Anyway, all of which to say is this was a really eye-opening Kickstarter for a couple of reasons. One is to always be it's a message to me for me is that always be cognizant of your emotions and your expectations going into a Kickstarter. Because each one is new and unique. There are factors much larger than myself, such as inflation, that have to be taken into account. There's also series fatigue that I maybe have to start considering with Drive, which is that people have already spent over 3 books, $150 on Drive hit Kickstarters. And do they want to spend another $55 for another hardcover? You know, that's a real thing that I might have to start facing. Yeah. So there's all sorts of factors like that. The other ones are the pragmatic looking at what's working, what's not working, and cutting what's not working, because why am I wasting time on Twitter and Threads and Instagram? That's actually helpful. And then doubling down on what is working. Coming out of this, I think I'm going to be jumping in on Substack with Drive and separately with Sheldon. Oh, good. To follow my friend Brad, because I trust him. If he says it's working, I'm going to jump in on that.
Good, good. Well, as we wrap up the Kickstarter topic, we do have to give Kickstarter a little tip of the hat in some recent innovation that they did.
Oh, yes. I'm so glad you reminded me of that, because this is my first project. In fact, I kickstarted another one like 5 months ago, 4 months ago, the Pickles book, maybe 6 months ago. And it did not have this feature turned on yet. So after 16 Kickstarters, I was quite excited to try this new Kickstarter feature that they have incorporated. It's a nice innovation. And it's this: you can keep certain tiers live for late pledges when your Kickstarter ends. Yeah. So my Kickstarter ended on Friday. Mm-hmm. And at that time, all the weird, complicated tiers ended. You could no longer do one of the weird, complicated, for reasons of logistics, and I can go into that if you want. But I did keep, here's the basic hardcover, here's a double hardcover if you want to get one and give one to your friend, right? You can do those levels. And for the most part, international levels turned off. Well, between Friday afternoon and Tuesday morning when we're recording this, that's just a couple of days difference, it's been $600 of more pledges since the Kickstarter ended. Wow. And, you know, my constant complaint with Brad has been the email that you get an hour after your Kickstarter,
literally
after you've been screaming into the void for 30 plus days going, dear God, my Kickstarter, hey, everybody, look at my Kickstarter. And literally it ends, and then 30 minutes later, you always get the email, did I miss it? Oh, how did I can't believe I missed it. And you're like, I'm going to murder everyone. Well, in this case, I've gotten $600 worth of people coming in going, did I miss it? Well, I guess I'll do this late pledge. Yes. And so I want to explain to you, because it is new, how it works for everyone. Mm-hmm. Kickstarter recommends, they actually do recommend not keeping all the tiers live for the benefit of your future Kickstarter, so that people know, look, when this is ending, you don't want to restrict your choices. Why don't you back it now while it's live?
You need it's got to happen now. Urgency,
you need that
urgency.
Yeah, that sense of urgency and FOMO if you don't back it while it's live. Yeah. So Kickstarter recommends that. They also recommend a slight price hike when the Kickstarter ends. And I was like, oh, I see the logic of that. So you can still get the book, but it's an extra $2, or you can still get the double books, but that's an extra $5, you know, whatever it is. The idea being that it's just enough pain so that the next time they go, oh, you know what? I should back it while it's live. I shouldn't wait till it's a late pledge. So all that being said, I think this is a great innovation, and I'm really happy that Kickstarter has incorporated it, which to me felt like an innovation in response to BackerKit, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt that they would have never come up with that without BackerKit nipping at their heels. You know, it was definitely a case of competition breeding innovation.
Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on Comic Lab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
You know, speaking of innovation, Dave, this is a topic that we've been encouraged to cover by one of our Patreon backers, Brandon, who writes, see, Patreon seems to be introducing new features every week. Could you guys spend some time unpacking all the latest features and discuss their benefits for cartoonists? So in the same way that I think and you think BackerKit nipping at Kickstarter's heels led them to do some innovation, and that late pledges is right out of the BackerKit playbook. In the same way, I think Patreon has been feeling Substack nipping at their heels, and
absolutely
they have released. We got to hand it to Patreon. They've come up with some really good features. Brandon's right. It seems like they're coming out every week, and we've got a lot to talk about in terms of these new Patreon features. And I'm just going to go down some of them here. And some of them now, some of them they're rolling out. So if you don't see these on your Patreon, it's coming soon. One of them I know is just brand new because I made the mistake of talking about them too early. And my backers were like, I'm not seeing anything you're talking about here. But let's talk about what Patreon's been rolling out, because there's a lot of them that have some really great uses. And one of them that I'm very excited about is Autopilot. Patreon will send targeted offers to selected fans to help grow your paid membership. For example, you can offer a 1-month discount to free members. So you've got that whole free membership tier, which, remember, Dave, you and I were very down on. And
and you know what? I want to call myself out publicly. I specifically was anti free membership tier because I didn't see a good way to work those folks up the ladder. Yeah, this is a brilliant and great way to do that.
This is perfect. And I've been doing a weekly outreach to my free members where I do kind of basically I repurpose a Substack newsletter post where I talk about stuff that's going on in my life and so on and so forth, stuff that's coming up in the comic. And that goes out to the free members as well, as long as a little bit of FOMO, you know, hey, we're doing a lot of stuff on Patreon that you're missing out on if you're not a paid member. And that has been working. And another new Patreon feature, their improved analytics has shown me that the free members are upping their membership. So it's working. But the Autopilot is brilliant. It's algorithmic. They're gonna pick people who they think are liable to up their pledge, and they're gonna send them a discount for the first month. After that first month, if they continue their subscription, they pay the regular price for whatever tier they're at. I immediately hit the button on this on my own personal Patreon. I think you saw it come up on the Comic Lab Patreon. You were the same thing. I would imagine you've got it on your own personal Patreons. Here's my question for you. And again, this might be a rollout thing. I haven't seen any activation on any of this. Like, I don't see that Autopilot has sent out any feelers. I certainly haven't seen anybody coming in at a discounted rate. Are you having the same experience?
What a great question. I don't know that I have, but I like Brad. I'm happy that this feature exists. This to me felt like a no-brainer.
Right.
And I don't know what the programmatic if-then statements they have to select certain patrons that are at a free membership. When they said let me back up. Patreon says it like this: hey, we will select ones that we think are high propensity free members, high propensity that they'll have a high propensity to jump up to a paid membership. And I'm guessing the if then statement in their programming is like, if they back more than 3 Patreons and you are their free one, then the likelihood is that they will jump up with the right kind of pricing. So it's probably something like that. But a part of me is like, do they just reach out to everybody on the free membership every couple of months? That might also be the case. I don't know. Yeah. But so far I haven't seen it, but I'm okay with that, because even if it works for one free member a month, it has cost me nothing in terms of having moved someone up to being a paid member. Like, it's sort of the loss leader to get someone in a door at Walmart. I'm okay with it,
Yeah. So here's another thing, and this one is an early rollout. You might, it's at the time of the recording. This is the one I was just telling you. I made the announcement too soon. I realized my backers were not seeing it. But hopefully by the time the show is published, they'll be further along. But I really love this too, and that is Patreon is offering related posts. So here's how it works. If you, and I saw it on the Patreon app. One of my backers said he saw this on the desktop, but I'm not seeing that. So I can't confirm that, but follow along. If you open up on the Patreon app and you tap on a post to open that post up, and you read the post, you scroll all the way down. Instead of the scroll stopping when you get to the end of the post, the scroll continues and it feeds you some related posts. Now, these are usually about 4 posts. 3 of them are from earlier this week, just stuff that you've posted recently. And then a 4th one hidden in there is a random pick from somewhere in your archive that, again, I'm sure is algorithmic. But it's completely random. And what's happening as a result of this that I'm really excited about, I can tell from my Patreon notifications that my backers are discovering these, and they're hitting the like button on them, and they're discovering stuff from my archive. Yesterday, somebody put a like on a commission that I had done in February of 2020. So
wow.
So that's a huge value add for that backer, because they're discovering stuff that they never saw before. And that's what you want. You want your backer to be constantly delighted. And so here's the thing. Number one, it's an early rollout. You might not be seeing it yet. Your backers might not be seeing it yet. But when this does become fully propagated, you're going to need to explain to the reader that it's there. You're going to need to do some communication. I've already recorded a walkthrough where I literally showed them, hey, take a look at this thing that's happening. It's really cool. You're going to need to communicate this, because they may not be seeing it naturally, but it's something that once they know that it's there, like I said in the walkthrough, I spent like 20 minutes just clicking on something and seeing what the related post was. Then you open up that related post and you scroll down. Now you got more related posts, and they're even more random. And I kept finding stuff that I had forgotten that I had done. And I just, I went on a deep dive through my own archive, just happy as a clam. Because it's like, look at this. I forgot about this. I was like, I'm such a delightful freaking artist. I don't remember doing that. So it's a huge value add for your backer.
I love the idea of you just at your computer going click, click,
standing
click.
ovation.
What a lovely party we're having in my own archives. More wine, more cheese.
I loved it. So that's keep an eye out for that. And when you do it, consider a walkthrough, because it takes a little explaining. But by all means, keep your eye on that. Now, here's another one that I'm really excited about. In fact, Dave, this popped up while I was eating breakfast. I have a bad habit of having a laptop open while I'm eating breakfast just to see what's going on to start my morning. And I went to the Comic Lab Patreon page, and they said, guess what? You can now do paid posts or collections. Oh, I immediately stopped chewing and tuned in, because here's what you can do. You can take your Patreon exclusives, and you can either say, like, let's say you've got one Patreon exclusive that's really, really good. And you can say, hey, you don't need to be a Patreon backer to access this. You can access just this post for a certain price, like selling an ebook or something like that, right?
Okay, yep.
That's great, right? Okay, a paid post, that's fine. I don't know that that's going to work a whole lot, but listen to this. Now, you can collect a bunch of posts into a collection. And we talked about Patreon collections a few months ago. So now, let's say that you've got a number of pro tips recordings that talked about Kickstarters and how to do a Kickstarter. Let's say you did a 3-part series just on how to do a Kickstarter, and then you did a bunch of other deep dives on Kickstarters. Then you had a few shows where you talked about Kickstarter. Let's say you put all of those into a collection and you put those up for, let's say, $10. You could access and download and have all of those Kickstarter related tutorials and materials without being a Patreon backer for just $10.
I like how you very quietly sidelined that in. Like, is there any Patreon you might be thinking of, Brad, where this is now available? Thanks to somebody leaving their eggs cold on the table with their laptop?
You better. It was worth the cold eggs. You better believe it'll be in the show notes. That's the first thing I put together because I'm like, and as soon as that 3-part series on Substack goes out, you better believe there's going to be one on Substack too. The Kickstarter collection has 23 episodes, a bunch of pro tips, and then a bunch of Kickstarter episodes that we did in the regular public show. But it's all gathered there for you to listen to. And for $10, I think it's a steal.
Can I tell you, I want you guys to imagine stepping into my shoes for a minute. Like, you think you hustle as a cartoonist. You think you're always working. But then you talk to your friend Brad Geiger, and he's like, over eggs this morning, I made 15 business decisions, and I implemented 10 of them. And by God, and you're like, wow, God.
Oh, I was really excited. In fact, that's one, speaking of innovation, which seems to be a theme of the show today, that's one that I want Substack to do, because if Substack, I've done a bunch of posts on Substack that have visuals and it's written. And I told Dave, I should just collect all my Substack stuff into an ebook and just sell that separately. If Substack would allow me to do the same thing that Patreon is doing, I could run with that, because I know that there's every time I do a Substack post, it goes through the roof. So this is one I want, a little reverse innovation. I want Substack to have this as soon as possible.
Can I backseat drive you on this?
Mm-hmm.
Or driver you on this? I feel like a price point of $10 is a little high. I think you would sell more and probably make more if you did a price point of $5 or $4.99.
Okay, now are you saying for the Substack thing or for the Kickstarter thing?
I would say for any of these, because otherwise
I can change it right now while we're on the show. It is no skin off my nose. But let me. I
want you guys to see it real time. This is the hustle that I have to deal with as a friend. He's like, I'll tell you what, I'll make 48 more business implementations right now while we're doing this podcast.
Stop me. You can't. But listen,
I'm actively eating my lunch while I'm maximizing my time 7 ways to Sunday. I'm Brad Geiger.
Let me run this past you though, because the Kickstarter advice package has 23 episodes, and I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let's say about 7. About 7 of them are exclusive pro tips episodes that you can't get any other way. 23, including 7 pro tips. Not worth $10?
You're asking me to judge you. Like, you're like, look at this shirt. Am I not handsome? Am I not handsome in this shirt? Look at this shirt.
It's a Comic Lab thing. It's judging us.
I know. I'm telling you, listen, there's a lot. 99% of people won't even see this as an option to buy it. They won't even notice it, is what I'm telling you. And then the people that do see it, they'll be like, I'll just become a Patreon member. I think a $5 price point is basically the value add is, look, I've collected them all for you. You don't have to hunt and peck them. That's out of our 300 episodes. These are the ones you need to listen to. $5. Come on. I'm Brad Geiger. Come on. Come on. I'm $5. Let's just see. Let's run this test. Let's run this test.
Okay.
For 3 months, let's keep it at $10.
I'm going to take my own advice. What's our advice when we do something like this to somebody? You can always make a price go down, but you can't make a price go up.
That's why I'm saying let's A/B test this. Let's keep it at $10 for 1 or 3 months, and then let's drop it to 5, and we'll see how we do.
Yeah.
We're just gonna see how we do. We're gonna see whose route turns out to be better. We're gonna see, because I think you're gonna move exactly 0 of these as Comic Lab collections. And I think it might be 0 even at the $5 level. I don't know that people are like coming to Patreon looking to buy a collection, but I appreciate the innovation of it, you know?
Yeah, no, I do too. Okay, so now I'm twice as charged up about this topic than I was originally. We'll put a pin in the paid posts and collections, but also let's give Patreon a tip of the hat to improve their analytics. I can now see how many of my free members are moving up into being paid members. That's a big plus. They've made the Patreon library, which you'll see in your left-hand column there. It's a new way of looking at the aggregate of your posts. It's a big plus if you need to make bulk edits to a bunch of posts. You can now do that. It's also a much better way to see what you've got scheduled. A much better way just to also, I hated, back in the day, I could very easily tell how many posts that I had made under a certain tag or a certain keyword. And I could just put that in and see the number, right? And I like doing that as a guy that's been doing it for 10 years because it's not number one on my list of marketing things, but I like being able to say that if you sign on to my Patreon, you'll get 1,500, you'll get instant access to 1,500 posts that fall under a certain category. That's good marketing. Right? You get instant access. Well, I didn't have access before they brought library. I lost the ability to make that count easily. So now library, you can get the count back. I like being able to say there's 300 bonus cartoons or whatever that number is. There's X number of full page evil inks. There's all of this stuff. I like having that. Library brought that back, so I'm pleased with that.
And let me underline something, because to some of you, it might have sounded like I was critiquing Brad on the paid collections, and I'm not. And I'll tell you why. Over 25 years of cartooning, both Brad and I have learned that unless you are actively trying new things and trying to put new legs under the table, you genuinely don't know which one's going to succeed and which one's not. So there are things that I know Brad looks that I'm doing and then goes, that ain't going to work. And then he's pleasantly surprised or pleasantly confirmed in his belief. And there are times where I'm looking at Brad and I'm like, that's not going to work. But the thing is, he and I and a group of peers and other professionals and pros that we look up to, we're constantly keeping an eye out on what they're trying, what's working, because sometimes you never know which specific thing starts clicking and you're like, t-shirts, turns out those work in 2004. Advertising, turns out that's a great income stream in 2009 or whatever it was. So this kind of innovation is great. And it underscores why competition is so good for Patreon, because I don't want to say they were resting on their laurels, but they were kind of resting on their laurels until Substack came along. You know what I mean? And until BackerKit came along, Kickstarter was kind of resting on their laurels. They had a fundamentally good product that was working and that they didn't see the need to push on. But until a competitor came along and said, hey, here's 40 new features that you can't get on Patreon, that suddenly spurs Patreon into action. And Kickstarter the same with BackerKit. And frankly, happens with Brad and I. If we're suddenly getting into the final quarter of the year and we realize we're down $10,000 from the previous year, holy hell, will Dave Kellett innovate? You know what I mean? You'll see things in that fourth quarter that'll be like, hey, gang, look at all the stuff that I'm doing. Because getting pushed into a corner or having competition is good for business. Like it keeps you nimble. And so I am not making fun of the fact that Brad is trying this collection thing, because Lord knows it might take off like wildfire. I was just saying, listen, I think the pricing can be adjusting, and Brad, will grant that too. He's not sure yet until we test it out. But the point is this: the innovation that comes from competition with Substack and Patreon, BackerKit, and Kickstarter, this is good for us. And this is partially why it's good for us that the DOJ and the EU have said, monopolistic practices from Google and Apple are hurting innovation because we don't know what better stuff we could have gotten from Google if Yahoo was still a really good going concern that was an active competitor to Google.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
In a way, it's impossible to say because you don't know what you're missing. But the fact is, competition breeds good innovation for features like Brad is talking about with Patreon this week.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna bring the last two in real quick here. Library, I think, is big. Also, merchandise. This is a little bit older, and I'm not talking about merchandise for membership or membership for merchandise, whatever that was. But Patreon has been rolling out you selling your merchandise through Patreon, and now they're offering discounts on those. They're building that in, which I think is smart. And coming soon, I don't think this is anywhere rolled out, but pretty soon, something that I've been banging the drum on for years. They finally listened to me. Do you remember when I pulled them aside at PatreonCon and I told them they needed to do this? They're finally doing it. They're doing gift memberships. So
yes.
you can give somebody access to
By the way, isn't that, I want to pause you. Isn't that a feature on Substack that you can gift a subscription?
Oh, yes, it absolutely is.
So you tell me, Brad Geiger's great idea, the exact same damn idea 7 years ago,
yes.
Patreon didn't listen.
Yes.
A competitor comes along offering that feature and it's working. Guess what gets implemented?
I'm still not positive that there wasn't a Substack spy in the room when I made that comment on Patreon. I think because I remember hearing footsteps like running away down the hall and a door slam and cackling. And I think they stole that from me, but I don't care. As long as you use it, I give it to the universe. I give my brilliance for free. Or maybe for $9.99, available on a Patreon collection today.
By the way, for the benefit of Brad's putting in the effort over his eggs, will someone go buy that $9.99 collection so that Brad's like, see, Dave? See?
Well, listen, the good thing is we're so high. This show is going to be 3 weeks till this show comes out. So the bad thing is somebody who bought it might say, if I would have waited one more week, it would have been $4.99. Oh, well, that's what happens.
That's all right. That's all right. No, but again, one is what a great friend to have in Brad Geiger, because honest to God, Brad, not workaholic, but like putting his nose to the grindstone and continuing to work and innovate, honest to God, spurs me to innovate and do more stuff, much like Substack does for Patreon, much like BackerKit does for Kickstarter. It's good to have a peer or a friend that you look up to that you can see in real time. Oh, they're doing XYZ. Maybe I should do XYZ, within reason. Oh, yeah. But it's just good. It's good to have sort of a marker like that in your own career. Just
to return the compliment, you had me thinking twice about doing hardcovers and soft covers. Right? Remember when I did my last Kickstarter, you said, why are you doing hardcovers and soft covers? You're knocking yourself out, and you were talking about how, you had kind of decided to just go towards hardcovers in your publishing. And it's got me thinking, rethinking how I was approaching all of this all along the way.
Well, I will say, and this is a topic for a totally different show.
Yeah.
Publishing, especially self-publishing, but also true for a lot of publishing, is the success for us is not in mass marketing and never was. Mm-hmm. And a soft cover is mass marketing. What we are producing is more of an object de art, or whatever the French phrase is, in that this is a high quality collection of something that somebody loved online. And so by God, give them a high quality collection of something. The margins are better. The satisfaction is better among readers when they get a hardcover. It's just, there's a lot of reasons why I personally lean towards doing a hardcover, and we'll talk about that on a different show. But again, this is why the competition not competition, but the friendly looking over the fence at the neighbor's grass and going, how is Brad's grass greener than mine, is good for both of us.
Well, and I'm glad you put it that way, because this kind of fits into why we've always discouraged people from doing print on demand. It's that same thing. It's that same thing. Why take a razor thin profit margin to send your readers crap when what they're really looking for is something that they can put on their shelf and be proud of,
Yeah. And might it be less people buying the hardcover than print on demand? Absolutely. Might the margins and the profit to you be higher regardless? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And might they be more satisfied and be more likely to be a recurring customer with a high quality hardcover? Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Now, all that being said, do Brad and I recommend a hardcover as your first book? No, we've talked about that repeatedly. We're just saying that for more established careers, it is a worthwhile venue to walk down.
Absolutely. Yeah, you want, but it's still the same thing. You want something you can put up on the shelf and be proud of. And speaking of it, it's time for us to put this episode up on the shelf and be proud of it. Who knows? It might be the 24th post in that 23 post collection that you can get for $9.99 on patreon.com/Comic Lab, where you will hear me say, you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my friend Brad Geiger, who will go straight from recording this show to eating lunch and showering and updating his Patreons all in the same 5-minute window, maybe at the same time. That lunch might be eaten in the shower with some saran wrap over his laptop as he updates his Patreon. Yeah. That's the kind of workaholic friend that I have who's innovating all the time. He's the editor of webcomics.com on Substack.
That's right.
And the creator of Evil Inc. at evilcomic.com.
And my close personal friend who is now suffering Kickstarter hangover as he looks at those numbers and said, I promised him what? Dave Kellett.
Oh, yeah.
I know. We all go through it. The co-director of the comics documentary strip, the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com, and by golly, you know you've heard him say it on Twitter. He does Drive at drivecomic.com.
It's funny, we were on the FaceTiming at the end of the Kickstarter, and Beth goes, well, now you have to sign 1,300 things. And I was like, oh, God, my wrist. Oh, no. The Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net, and this episode was edited by the ever-wonderful, ever-kind, ever-talented Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, then you should still be listening, but we know you're not. We know you've already turned the show off. We found out just a little while ago, you guys aren't listening all the way through. You're not getting to the stingers. We had so many people giving us corrections on that last show. But listen, if you are still listening, then we love you right back. Take a couple seconds, review the show on Apple Podcasts. You may hear your review featured on a future episode. And gosh, thanks for all those 4-star, 5-star, I forget how many stars. I'm getting loopy now, but thanks for those ratings on Spotify. All seriousness, you have been keeping us right at the top of the podcast chart.
Absolutely. And Comic Lab is made possible by your support at patreon.com/Comic Lab. So I will go ahead and suggest join us at the freebie level, because maybe you'll get that autopilot bump up at the discounted price.
Yeah.
Why not try it? Honest to God. Sign up to join Comic Lab as a freebie member. You'll get that autopilot discount for the first month. Try it. It won't hurt Brad and I. We're all for it. Yeah. And I will say that twice. Patreon.com. That was so mangled. Anyway, I will say that.
I wonder why they don't listen to the end of the show, Dave. It's really confusing me.
I will say that URL twice. Patreon.com/I'm new to English.
Well, listen, Dave, now that you're done with that Kickstarter, you know what I want you to do with all those feelings of anxiety and self-doubt and self-hatred that you put into those last 30 days in Kickstarter? I want you to put those in a jar and put it up next to the bathroom sink. That's what you do. That's what you do with those bad feelings.
Oh, God. Oh, my God. That's still such a curdle of joy for me. Put it in a jar and put it by the bathroom sink. So random. God, I love your brain even more because I know exactly what was happening. It's just the sort of like rodent panic of like you started the sentence and you don't know how to finish it.
I'm going to get through the sentence.
All right, so take this thought and put it in the jar. And then your brain's like, what do we got? What do we got? Put it by the bathroom sink. Oh, God. I've been Brad Geiger. That's $9.99.
Look for the link in the show notes. Who cares? They're not listening.